to Unravel with Natalie Denise.
Hey, muchachos y muchachas. Welcome to Nightly with Natalie / the Daily Traffic, where I bring you guys headlines as well as trafficking news. Let me turn this light off. Okay, sorry. What's going on? So I've got everything connected. I've got Facebook. I've got you guys on YouTube. And then I just added Patriot Voice TV on Roku. What's going on? I wish Patriot Voice TV, if I wish I could see comments, I know it's on Roku, so it's not, it's different form. But I would love to see like interactions. You know what I mean? I just love your interactions because sometimes it's funny. Sometimes y'all give me good tidbits of what to look up. But anywho, you guys, so I've had a very different day today. So kind of sad news, but I had to give up coffee. And I I mean coffee, you know what I mean? Like iced coffee, hot coffee, like conversational coffee, like I had to give that up. And it's all part of the process of getting older. Oh, I'm like, no, I'm not one of those stories though. You know what I mean? Like I'm not one of those stories where I have to give up stuff and I have to like change my routine, but I do drink quite a bit of caffeine. I guess like previous to today, I would drink pre-workout, and then after pre-workout and I would get back home, I would make me a cup of coffee, and then I would have like additional cups of coffee throughout the day. So I guess I did drink quite a bit of caffeine and my body was begging me to stop. It was like, stop, Natalie, you're ruining me. And I just had to listen. So man. So anyway, my brother, he suggested dandelion root. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not like as strong as coffee, but it has like I can't say it's a coffee taste, but it does have like this reminiscence to coffee a little bit. So I think we're okay. I think we can do this. Okay. So I just wanted to give you guys my slight woes before we began, So what's been going on today? I published 2 videos. One on, we're going to actually talk about that in the daily traffic segment. The Clinton backed pastor in Haiti who was indicted on child sex charges. That's pretty serious. And then another one on Kanye's rant. I just published that video on my main YouTube. If you guys aren't following me there, it's youtube.com/Natalie Denise, spelt like that, NATLYDENISE. For those that are listening to me on audio podcast, thank you guys for your audience and your support as well. But this video covers Kanye. I uploaded a video on Kanye West. He did a rant about 2 days ago and he quickly deleted everything. And part of this rant, I was just kind of like extrapolating certain details, like, wait a minute, he's saying some things that we should probably look into. And, the whole thing was surrounding, we're orbiting North, his daughter, being on TikTok. She's 8 years old. I mean, come on. I grew up, I think I'm one of like the last breed generations. Actually, I'm going to have to talk to all my little podcaster friends on the side because I really want to do a segment called I Remember and kind of bring in Generation X or any generation previous to millennials and also millennials. I want to talk about like our upbringing and like the technology and all that, like how it was being brought up in analog times and seeing it transform into what it is today. I just think that that's a really interesting conversation. So I'm gonna have to talk to some people because I would really love to have that conversation. I'm gonna try to diversify this podcast channel a bit more, bring more guests on, as well as having those, again, those types of conversations. Oh, but I'm sorry, I went on a tangent there, but what I was talking about was Kanye. So Kanye and his 8-year-old daughter. So North, she's on TikTok, 8 years old, right? So first of all, there's a bunch of creepers and pedophiles on there, you know, and they're actively scouting for things like this where girls are left unattended and doing things on their own on TikTok. And yeah, it's pretty grave, that type of situation. And so his argument is like, Kim Kardashian's not doing nothing to respect me. I've already, you know, said things to her and she's not respecting me. And the last video that they posted, it is pretty, I mean, for an 8-year-old girl, I don't know. To me, it's a little raunchy, even if there was an adult presence in that video. Anyway, go watch that video on youtube.com/Natalie Denise. I just uploaded it about an hour ago. What's on the agenda? What's on the roster today? So I think we're just going to talk about trafficking news because, man, there's a bunch to catch up on. And you know, the headlines, the regular headlines, I get it. Russia, Ukraine, there's a lot going on. I'm actually going to have to dig through the BS, you know, because you have all these headlines, Putin man bad, and, you know, Ukraine is winning, which is like, what? I just saw actually that Biden just authorized $1 billion in aid to Ukraine. It's like, Biden, what are you doing that, or what do you have in Ukraine that you're trying to defend so hard? You know what I mean? The $1 billion in aid to Ukraine. That's crazy sauce. But without further ado, let's actually get into some of this news here. There was one crazy story, and I'm trying to dig a little bit more so I can make a video out of it. What's going on, guys? Let's actually say hi to the chat before we get in. What's up? The Only Warnley, Keem. Thank you so much for being my faithful mod. Always, every single day. I appreciate you, Keem, so much. Mark, much love from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Appreciate you. You do more than just read headlines. Thank you. I like to analyze a lot. I like to like dig deeper and just like find little pieces. You know what I mean? What's up? Mama Pillow says, I would cry. Yerba Mate is your new friend, or Earl Grey. You know what? Funny enough, I actually talked to my mom. I was like, Mom, I have to give up coffee. You know, this is a hard thing. And she was like, well, what are you replacing with? I said, Earl Grey black tea. And she was like, girl, that's the same thing. She was like, you better get off of that black tea, because I was doing like this English thing where I was doing like black tea and cream and honey. And she was like, it's the same thing. You're doing the same thing to your digestive tract than you did with your coffee. You're not doing anything. So unfortunately, I had to give it up because I was experiencing the same illnesses. All right. Cool beans. Let's get to it. Like I said about 1,000 times. Sorry about that. All right. So this is an interesting story. This one I really want to do a big dig on. I've already tried to start digging on this, but there isn't a lot. But guys, this dude over in Portland, Portland, Oregon is who was trying him. But this dude, he was trafficking women through his bottled water company. What? And you know what? I should actually try to find the Instagram. I will. I'm going to find the Instagram link because I want to actually show you guys this this account, because it looks to be that he was actually probably cataloging these girls or these women on his Instagram. Where is it? Where is my whatchamacall? Here it is. He was probably cataloging all these women on his Instagram. I'm going to show you. I was just sending me the link. So let me read you out the details first. A Tigard, Oregon man is facing federal charges for sex trafficking by force and laundering proceeds through Necky Hydrate, a bottled water company based in Portland. And this is coming from justice.gov, the District of Oregon. Jonelle Lee Cleveland has been charged with sex trafficking by force, fraud, and coercion, money laundering, and illegally possessing a firearm as a convicted felon. This is the second time in 5 months. I'm telling you guys, I will keep saying it every single podcast because I just want to throw my chair because this is happening in every single city. This is why he's out. Like, he's been convicted before. These bail reforms happening in every major city is doing this. I know for sure in Houston, where I'm at right now, our council people, the city or the county judge, They are doing this by agenda, where they are lowering the bail reform, or they are reforming the bail so low that these convicts, these repeat sex offenders, they're getting out like on cents on the dollar. I'm not even kidding. In Austin, what did we learn about a couple months ago? In Austin, there was a judge. There were two judges. One judge let out a sex offender. He was actually a child offender, and he violated the child again. And the first judge recommended a $1 million bail, and the second judge revised that and actually only gave him a 50, I think it was like a $50,000 bail. So he had the ability to bail out with $5,000. But this is exhibit A. This is another exhibit A of what's happening in every major city. So this is the second time in 5 months Cleveland has been indicted in federal court. In November of 2021, he was indicted for perpetrating insurance. I don't know why I had a hard time reading that. Perpetrating insurance and COVID relief fraud schemes while on federal supervised release. According to the indictment, beginning in August 2020 and continuing until his arrest in November of 2021, Cleveland used force and coercion to cause an adult victim to engage in commercial sex acts. Cleveland used funds generated by the sex trafficking to pay for business expenses for Necky Hydrate, including costs for bottling and manufacturing, rental of corporate offices or a corporate office in Portland, merchandising, and monthly retainer with a modeling agency. What? We put it together, a monthly retainer with a modeling agency. These payments were made to conceal and disguise the nature of his sex trafficking proceeds. If convicted, Cleveland faces a maximum sentence of life in jail. Life in prison. U.S. Attorney Scott Eric Asfog of the District of Oregon made the announcement. So this is the stuff that I want to know here. The monthly retainer with a modeling agency. So let's actually take a look at his Instagram profile, because we're going to see a lot of like some of this content here. So this is Necky Hydrate on Instagram. This is the same thing. This is a guy that you guys see here, Necky Hydrate. I'm just going to highlight it just so that way you guys see that I'm doing due diligence here. So Necky Hydrate. Let's go to the Instagram here. So this is Necky Hydrate. And as you can see, there are models, and it looks very professional. Now, just be warned that you're probably going to see a lot of booties on here, a lot of bare butts, and I don't think there's topless photos or anything like that when I glanced through it last time, but you will see a lot of booties. But this is Necky Hydrate. As you can see, there's a lot of professional models here. This looks like high grade model, like the first two pictures. But as you can continue on down, you see like it gets a little bit more raunchy, and it's kind of like, why do you need to do this for a water company? You know what I mean? Like, you go, what are some other, I mean, now I question all the water companies. What are we doing? But you don't go to like Smart Water and see like, booties all up on their Instagram. But you see here that it's just out of the ordinary for a bottled water company. And I believe this was a dig somewhere in the past, and I really, really wish that I saved it. But I believe that they actually made a dig on this a couple years ago on Twitter. There was just a user, an anon, if you will, who did some research and found out that some of the girls that were being used on the Instagram profile, and I believe it was this very company, but don't hold me to that, but I believe it was the same, they were utilizing this as a catalog. And back then, I remember seeing a lot more raunchier photos, but you can see here that there's some like a mixture of like regular modeling photos, but then it's like, like the earlier, why do we need all the other ones? And as you can see, they have a lot of merchandise, like you can see here merchandise, top and bottoms, bikinis. And it's kind of like ambitious for a water company. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's actually go to their story, and we're going to see just a little bit more. Come on, if you'll load, or if it won't load. Here we go. Okay, so just some water, but then you see like a lot of girls on here. You can see here Nikki Hydrate merchandise, girls posing with the water. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just out of the ordinary for a water company. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind listening to that report. So let me see what you guys are saying about this. Putin has, oh yes, what you guys are talking about Putin. Mama Pillow says Rachel Ch Andler also did that. The You guys are really, wow, you guys are really recollecting on the Chandler, on the Chandler with the Bill Clinton on the airplane. Yep. But yep, we'll have to dig into that a little bit more. Maybe this will just be a video on just that, on water companies and trafficking through various ways like that. But yeah, isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? It looks like a regular old justice.gov document, but like when you dig further, it's like, oh wow, like look, they might have been cataloging these chicks on their own Instagram. All right, the next one coming same from Department of Justice.gov. Middle District of Florida, a Texas man pleads guilty to trafficking a minor from Houston to Tampa, Florida. Again, child trafficking. Tampa, Florida. United States Attorney Roger B. Handberg announces that Jamal Muldrew, 33, from Houston, Texas, has pleaded guilty to sex trafficking a child, coercion and enticement of a minor to engage in sexual activity, use of a facility of interstate commerce in aid of racketeering, and the interstate transportation of a person for prostitution. Muldrew faces a minimum mandatory sentence of 10 years and up to life in federal prison. A sentencing date has not been set. According to court documents, on April 9th, 2021, law enforcement coordinated an operation in Tampa, Florida to identify victims of human trafficking, rescue those victims, and identify and arrest their traffickers as part of this operation. An undercover officer observed what appeared to be a potentially underage female in an online escort advertisement and arranged for the minor or the child to a victim to meet up at the hotel room for a commercial sex act in exchange for $800. Soon thereafter, Muldrew arrived at the location driving a black Chevrolet Impala with the minor victim or the child victim in the passenger seat. The victim exited the vehicle, walked to the hotel room, and entered and was detained. As law enforcement approached Muldrew, he attempted to flee but was ultimately apprehended at the time of his arrest. Officers recovered multiple fictitious identity cards Muldrew had in his possession for both himself and the minor victim. The subsequent investigation revealed that Muldrew had been trafficking the minor victim across the country to engage in prostitution. Specifically, between February and April of 2021, Muldrew had trafficked the minor victim for the purpose of commercial sex in Texas, New Jersey, Maryland, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. So this was cross-national. He was crossing state lines with this child to prostitute her out. And I know a lot of people have a lot of conflicts with saying prostitute her out, but and I know it is a form of statutory rape, but this is what they were doing in order to exploit the child. It is in essence, it is prostituting them out. I know it shouldn't exist, but this is what happens. Okay. This case, I know a lot of people get really crossed with semantics when I report the trafficking news sometimes. This case was investigated by Homeland Security Investigations, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, and the Houston Police Department. It's being prosecuted by the Assistant United States Attorney Elisa M. Spergel and Carlton C. Gammons. All right. Oh, there's a lot. Yep. Oh, Putin has sanctioned Biden. And then Nasty Nug says, Putin has something on those sanctions. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to find out a lot. I think this show is going to be really busy once we find out more about what's being uncovered in Ukraine. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to say that. I don't care what people think. I don't care what people think. People are like the mainstream media wants to, perpetrate like, oh, just stand with Ukraine and don't think about it. It's like, no, but there's a lot of things that are happening. For instance, did you guys see that OnlyFans, the owner of OnlyFans, he's actually Ukrainian, and he actually owned other domains that said something like slaveboy.com and something like it almost seems pedophilic in nature. Again, I'm going to have to look into that as well just to check some sources. But yeah, there's a lot more going on in Ukraine than people suspect. The media is just, they want to keep it cozy in their own sense for them. All right, let's continue on going to the next story. Okay, so this one's a big one. This is a big bust, and I'm surprised I didn't even see it. This happened in the very beginning of March. We're 2 weeks away from this. This happened and nobody blinked an eye. 43 New Zealanders, they're arrested. 6 children were rescued as part of a global sex abuse investigation. Humongous. This is a big bust, a global pedophile ring, and this is coming from stuff.co.nz. I know, why is that? It's such a generic domain. A global pedophile ring has been uncovered by a New Zealand-led investigation, resulting in 146 children around the world being saved from potential harm. Known as Operation H, the investigation is the largest of its kind. It uncovered 90,000 account holders sharing more than 1,000 images and videos of children being sexually abused. The operation has contributed to 836 individual investigations in 130 countries, from Azerbaijan, and Vanuatu. So far, 43 New Zealanders have been arrested and charged in connection with the investigation. Some of those cases are still progressing through the courts. The Te Tari Tawanua Department of Internal Affairs, DIA, Digital Child Exploitation Team Manager Tim Houston said some of the material uncovered by the investigation team was the very worst. Okay, brace for the next part, okay? And included babies being tortured and raped. This was the dark web. This is what happens on the dark web. This is not at all a conspiracy theory. This is not at all something that's made up or something that is I just thought up, fragment of our imagination. This actually happens. People who are sick out there pay for this, and they find this over and over and over again. So the worst of that type of content was found in this bust, Operation H. He says the vast majority of what we analyzed in the material was very young children. Again, brace for this. Infants, babies, toddlers, and the degrees of abuse and sadism was absolutely horrific. I mean, babies, toddlers, infants, abuse and sadism was absolutely horrific, meaning that these people got off. These were snuff films, got off of torturing babies and raping these children. He said while catching those responsible was important, saving children from further exploitation was a paramount to the investigation team, which included police and customs. What we're talking about here is a moment in time when a child experienced probably the worst moment in their life, and then it's captured and circulated on the internet when they're re-victimized over and over again. The material on the platform came from every continent, and some of it had been circulating online for years. This material that we see here time to time again, when when that child is an adult, they might be able to find the image of them being abused as a child. It really hits home. Short of the internet being purged, they're going to be in circulation for pretty much forever. Some of the children in the images could be identified, but others were unknown, Houston said. So what they're saying there is, if you didn't catch it, that because some of this material has been online for years, that some of these children actually who get to grow up, who actually get to, have some form of future, they catch this material online, being traumatized as a child, and then they have to be re-traumatized as an adult because this stuff is still circulating, and pretty much it's going to be circulating for the rest of their life on the internet because sick asses seek this type of content. They continue, some tragic examples where images of the same child being sexually abused circulate on the internet over years. You can actually see them aging in the material as it released online. God, that's so sick. I'm going to repeat that again. These kids, these children that were being abused so severely and consecutively that the investigators could actually see the progression of their aging as they found the content of this dark web material. Imagine. The specialized investigators combed over the material, searching for clues to identify who and where the children and abusers were. Those clues included a brand of chocolate bar in the background of a shot and the type of wall socket. Operation H was sparked by a tip-off by an anonymous online service provider in September of 2019. So imagine 2019, September 2019, that's on the tail end of the year. September, October, November, December. Yeah, it's on the tail end of the year. So 2020, 2021. So about for two years. For a full 2 years, this investigation was ongoing. We don't know exactly if there was any sort of rescue or extraction in these 2 years, but imagine that's a long time to gather all this information, and you just, it's like you have to it's like the investigation is weird because the process is weird because you have to let things unfold in order to gather that evidence. But this is so horrific. This is so unfathomable that this had to continue for 2 years. 2 years. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. I know that this is hard for you guys to listen to. Some people had to jump off because this is so dark. But again, the reason why I do this is because nobody is talking about this, guys. Nobody is talking about this. Nobody is giving you the day-by-day play of the bigger headline news of being children being exploited. I know that this is hard to listen to, but imagine if you're not disturbed by this, if you don't know what's going on, how are we supposed to fight it if we don't know what's happening? But I understand some of this is really, really dark and heavy. So this was tipped off by an anonymous online service provider in September 2019. The provider said that thousands of people were sharing and viewing child sex abuse images via a web address. A month later, similar content was being shared on a second URL. And this is a map. It says DIA investigators worked closely with international partners throughout Operation H. You could see all of these areas affected. Countries that Interpol engaged with. Interpol is actually doing a really good job. The provider handed over information related to 150,000 accounts, which allowed the DIA to begin looking into who was behind the usernames. Over 2 years, up to 20 investigators worked on the investigation, identifying where the account holders were from, what they had been doing, and who they were. They were able to put together information on 90,000 account holders, a worldwide web of pedophiles. The team of DIA investigators analyzed each video and image, graded it, and provided a detailed description in an effort to save their overseas counterparts having to view the material. Houston said that that's Tim Houston, the guy, said that the resulting investigation, required the close collaboration of investigators from around the world, including Five Eyes partners, the FBI, Interpol, Europol, and others. But the DIA also uncovered offending in Aotearoa with 125 accounts being identified as New Zealand based. These were so many that the cases had to be triaged, meaning that when you triage something, like in hospital terms, that means like, the most important, prioritize. It's sick. At the top of the list were account holders who had access to children, were in positions of authority. Excuse me. At the top of the list were account holders who had access to children, were in positions of authority, or had previous convictions. Detective Inspector Stuart Mills said that once arrested and charged, offenders could sometimes be helpful in identifying other people involved in the network. He said some of those arrested were aged in their early 20s. The idea that all offenders online were old white men wasn't true. That kills the myth. Thank you so much for saying that. I don't know where that came from. This whole like, oh, it's just a certain race. It's like literally everybody, and the Johns are everybody. We've seen stories here as long as I've been doing this, where the stories are politicians. They are people of ethnic backgrounds, Hispanic, Latinos, Black people. Like it's everybody. It's not just white men. That's a complete false. That's a falsity. That's not true at all. The buyers come from all walks of life, and the victims come from all walks of life. Both, they come from all backgrounds. It's not geared towards one race, I can assure you. Houston said that more arrests were likely and work on the operation could continue for years to come. Meanwhile, 146 children had been removed from dangerous situations throughout the operation. 6 of those were in New Zealand. So 146 children. 146. They ranged in ages coming from all walks of life and locations around the country. While there was no evidence so far that the children in New Zealand were sexually abused, some of those children were in custody of an offender, for example, a mother's new partner. Mills said that the police uncovered evidence of one of the offenders planning to meet up with a young girl. The operation allowed police to intervene and prevent the meeting from taking place. Houston said that rescuing children had been a vital part of the operation. Research out of the United States suggested over half of the online child sex offenders admitted to a history of contact offending. That's a new word. Hey, actually clock that. That's a new word. That's a new word. That's a new word that you hear these professors in, there was one in Old Dominion, and this was a professor. She claims she's a trans man, and her argument, you see, their new argument now is that, oh, they're not all offenders if they're pedophiles, as long as they don't touch the child. That's just their sexual inclination. Full stop. We don't care. No, you don't even get to have sexual inclinations towards children. So what they're saying, this is a new key word, is that if they're contact offending, so meaning that if they actually touch the child, that's contact offending. So these professors arguing the latter, saying, oh, not all of these people are offenders, not all of them are contact offending, buzzword. It's like, that doesn't matter. Like, they still had the inclination, they still thought about the act and all of that. So just know that is a word to look out for. Houston said that the links between sharing images of children being sexually abused and the person physically abusing children, a child, were well established. From what I understand, it is tied to the desensitization, you're being desensitized or whatever. The offender, their spiral of accessing material once they have viewed and derived sexual gratification from watching material that would make the average person cry or feel physically ill, their levels of care dissipate. This is a very, I'm so glad that this is I need to do a little bit more research on this right here, because this part is very important to understand. You would have to wonder, like, how does one get into that type of really dark material? And this is why, and I don't care if I sound puritanical. I really don't. I don't care. But this is what porn also does to your brain. This is a science. Like, this is true. So your brain it's what's called plastic, not like plastic, not like this, but it's moldable. You can configure your brain and mold it, and your neural pathways, they form these it's like they're like paths, right? And so when you think about something that makes you feel good, like, maybe it is on, you're on a roller coaster, right? Or maybe like puppies may, like, they send you the happy pheromones or whatever, the happy hormones. It's called dopamine. I'm gonna kind of paraphrase how this works, but when you build your brain to capacitate what makes you feel happy or what satisfies you, when you push the bar with something like porn, so you're looking at a natural sexual intercourse, right? And you get satisfied with one, then you're looking for the next bar to be pushed. So you start looking for titles that are kind of out there, right? And so that's why you see a lot of these stories that I report on, a lot of them are reporting on child sexual abuse material or child pornography, because a lot of these sickos out there, what they're doing is they're remolding their brain, where their neural pathways are being rebuilt. So what satisfied them before no longer satisfies them anymore, because they have built new neural pathways. It doesn't matter how much you think you can control yourself, watching pornography or anything like that. It literally does harm your brain, because you're building new capacities. So this is what's happening to these dark web people who are seeking out this type of content. They keep building out those neural pathways, and so they have to push the bar, and it starts an addiction, and so it's no longer horrific anymore. It's just normalized. So that's what he's talking about right there. So that actually needs to be explained a little bit, because a lot of people don't understand the science behind like the neuroscience behind watching pornography and then all of this unnatural stuff, because then it pushes the bar, and then they want to see more sick stuff. Houston used a metaphor of a wall. As an offender viewed more and more sadistic content, he felt less shame and fear, and the wall to physically offending got lower and lower. It is therefore never safe to assume that these individuals were just offending online. There was an increased risk of this crossing over into physical offending. He said it was only when DIA and police actually analyzed the computers, phones, and tablets of the suspect that the scale of offending was learned. On average, we'd see 2 smartphones, a tablet, a desktop computer, and sometimes a laptop, sometimes an optimal disc. We haven't seen a VCR for a while. You have to get through the person's front door to get inside their devices and machines to truly understand the nature of their offending and their risk. Often, the Operation H images were just a fraction of an offender's collection, he said. And this is true. There was actually one statistic I saw once in one of these reports that I view, that back then in the 90s or like in the early thousands, if someone were to get caught with CSM, which is called child sexual material, they would have like 80 to 100 pieces on them. Now compared to now they find like tens of thousands of content on their devices. I'm not kidding. This is out of control. The investigation was a tool for preventing further offending, as well as the prison time and bail conditions, which prevented the offenders access to children. The operation also brought offenders' behavior to the notice of the families, friends, and neighbors, Houston said. Good. People need to, I mean, they're surrounding people for the safety of children and their family, and for the sake of shame. We just need to bring shame back into our culture. Like, it's like shame. You should feel shamed for doing this. If convicted, it could result in the offender's name being added to the child sex offender register. Mills said that publicity around these operations sometimes resulted in offenders changing their behaviors, but investigators were able to adapt. He hoped the publicity would lead to a raised awareness of this kind of offending, and urged people to urged people who noticed suspicious behavior to report it to the police. That is the end of that story. I mean, wow, that was a lot. I know it was a lot. I know it was. I know it was. These types of busts need to be talked about. These types of busts, and look, this goes back to like talking about the online social media aspect of kids being on there too early. 8 years old, you're too young. You're too little to be on here in the world of creepers and pedofifis actively looking for even the most innocent content. Um Exploitations, it's in stages, and these parents really need to be more keen on what's going on the internet and letting their children on there, because really, if they knew the extent, they would not have their child's face, or them flaunting around on TikTok and social media reels, for likes. All right, the next story is coming from Breaking 911. A former prison nurse charged with sexually assaulting a dozen inmates in Oregon. Oregon has been in the news quite a bit this week. Quite a bit. Actually, that bottled water story from Oregon. A federal indictment was unsealed today in Portland, Oregon, charging a former Oregon Department of Corrections employee with sexually assaulting a dozen female inmates while serving as a nurse at the Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, Oregon's only women's prison. Tony Daniel Klein of Clackamas County, Oregon, is charged with 21 counts of depriving the victims of their constitutional right to not be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment by sexually assaulting them. The indictment alleges that from 2016 through 2017, Klein committed various forms of sexual assault, some of which included aggravated sexual abuse and some resulting in bodily injury. Klein is also charged with 4 counts of perjury for giving false testimony during a 2019 deposition related to a federal lawsuit alleging he committed sexual misconduct while serving as a corrections nurse. If convicted, Klein faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. And clocking over to News 9 ABC, this is in Tennessee. A human trafficking charges 5 men from Rhea County, Chattanooga, Chickamauga, and Ottawa. Sorry if I butchered that. 5 men face several charges after a undercover human trafficking bust centered in Rhea County, according to Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. The TBI says that undercover sting happened over a 2-day period last week with the help of Rhea County authorities, including the Dayton Police Department. Undercover officers placed several decoy advertisements on websites known to be linked to prostitutes and commercial sex. The advertisement offered an opportunity to have sex with a minor. So these guys right here, you guys can take a good picture of their mug or good look at their mugshot. But they were planning to meet up with a kid with inclinations to do things to them. Eugenio Bautista, 2 counts of trafficking for commercial sex act, 2 counts of especially aggravated sexual exploitation of a minor. Kevin Cormier, Spring City, 2 counts of trafficking for commercial sex acts. Devin Wayne Riddle, Chickamauga, Georgia. I don't know how to pronounce that. Apologies. 1 count trafficking for commercial sex act. 1 count of manufactured delivery, sale of possession of methamphetamine. 1 count of unlawful drug paraphernalia. Kevin Ramirez Vasquez, 1 count of trafficking for commercial sex acts. And Eric Allen Zaliski, 1 count of trafficking for commercial sex act. Well, I mean, you see that? We went through one full, well, not yet one full, but like almost 1 hour full of trafficking news. And that was just trafficking news. Usually I have time for like a headline, like a normal headline. So I could just like cover that. But I'm telling you, like, nobody covers this. Like, this is important. This is important to know. Like, this is happening in all kinds of parts of the world. Like, thousands, tens of thousands were busted in a pedophile ring online. 146 children were rescued from this. 5 men arrested in Tennessee for wanting to meet up with a child. A man trafficking through his bottled water company. Like, what Twilight Zone are we living in that we don't know about this? This is crazy. Anywho, so yes, Mama Pillow says unsealed. That's also what they said about the U.S. pastor you reported on who worked in Haiti. I know that you make a really good point, Mama Pillow. She says unsealed. That's also what they said about the U.S. pastor you reported on in Haiti. Exactly. There's unsealed indictments. And the bottled water thing, it's I don't think that's something new. I think actually somebody, I'm telling you, somebody on Twitter made a dig about that water company. I want to say back in 2019 or 2020. It's been a couple years, and now it's just so happens that it's an unsealed indictment. So unsealed indictments. What other sealed indictments will we see come about in the short time that we're here? We'll see, but I'll keep my eye on it. Guys, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for your love. Thank you for always coming back to my podcast at night. I really, really am honored that you guys watched me and you're interested to learn what's going on. Be sure to share this channel wherever it is, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, or if you guys want to subscribe to Patriot Voice on YouTube. I'm sorry, on YouTube. Roku. I meant Roku. On Roku, you guys can do that too. That's where I am also streaming. Thank you so much for your time, attention to this. I really love you and appreciate you guys. NatalieDenise.com/donate is where you can tip me for, very researched stories like this. I'm also planning on doing, I've had no luck with other platforms like the Patreon type stuff. So I think I'm going to do it on my own website. So stay tuned for that. I think I'm going to launch that, an actual subscription service where I don't depend on anybody and I could just depend on myself. Right. Okay. So anyway, so that's more exclusive content. I've tried to do it in the past, but the other platforms were, they just didn't work. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's episode. Love you. Good night or good morning and good day.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Unravel with Natalie Denise. Please give this podcast 5 stars.